But I've talked enough. So let's go ahead and get started. Colorless items. What we call a colorless item is basically something from a cursed chest or it's from a legendary chest. It's an item that you can use in any build, but sometimes I see a certain one and I still sell it. Balance Blade. Balance Blade is a primary red item. If you find a colorless one and you're thinking about do I use it or not, that means you're either playing purple or you're playing green. Balance Blade is an example where if I see it on the ground while green, I'll probably sell it. And the reason why is like, okay, so the dream would be you have a Balance Blade, you have like a Wolf Trap, Crusher, you put those down, the monster can't like fight you while you're wailing on it with a Balance Blade. And that's like, to me, not as good as just having a Nutcracker. And Nutcracker doesn't need to ramp up the same way as that weapon does. Just slap some ice shards on it. Then I feel like ice shards while playing survival is the reason why you might take any of these. And I don't know if it's worth it to hold on to a Balance Blade until you find the ice shards. It might be the opposite where it's like, okay, let's say you're in like Moras or something. Ice shards fall to the floor. You think there's a cursed chest later on the map. You leave the ice shards because of the chance you might run into one of these. As tactics though, I honestly do take this as tactics. And the reason why is Corrupted Power with Balance Blade is actually pretty decent. If you think about Balance Blade as something that is just not very strong, Corrupted Power brings it up to that level. It makes it so that the first monsters you kill trying to ramp up get actually killed. And then once you get the ramp, you don't really need to use the Corrupted Power anymore unless you're in like a prison depths and the monsters have a ridiculous amount of health. You can just hit everything with the crits. You can run Instinto, which is this thing here, and have a really good build with something like Corrupted Power plus Lacerating Aura, which is also purple. Or you could do something like a Stealth Grenade in between so that when the Corrupted Power is down and you have downtime on the Balance Blade, you can use something like this or the Grapple Hook or the Phaser to use it. And those are all like slash red items in the first place. But you use this along with Predator, the mutation that makes you invisible. And Predator with Balance Blade is actually like pretty decent. It removes that chance of the downtime, and if you do get downtime, you have stuff like the Lacerating Aura, or you have stuff like the Corrupted Power, the Grapple Hook to get you back up and running. Spite Sword. I've seen a lot of people posting this thing while purple, and like it could be okay, but I feel like it's almost like using the Nutcracker measurement here. While you're purple, the gameplay that you're getting from this thing I don't think is very good. And purple does have a decent amount of damage reduction to it, so you could run the Smoke Bomb, you could run the Ice Grenade, and in those circumstances, like, okay, I can take one hit against the giant, but because your health is so low, and I hate to think that someone would want to build like built for health tactics. That's something that we used to do back in the day with heavy crossbow. It's a little easier when the weapons themselves had stats on it, but without that, I feel like it's not that great. And I would hate to actually get hit while using this while playing tactics. Survival is a different story though. Survival, I would leave this on the ground if I see it, and then I would take it with a shield and just run pure block on bosses. Like, you will not die to Hand of the King if you do that. You can actually get your health back on every hit with Spite Sword. The same happens when you're playing Brutality. In fact, the gameplay between Spite with red and green is like pretty much the same. The only difference is that you don't have melee mutation. Instead, you have like necromancy to get the melees taken off. Or you have like strong stuff, say Giant Whistle to one-shot elites That's really what the melee mutation's for, is to make sure the monster's in check. Survival has a decent amount of stuff that does that. Basically, just Death Orb and Giant Whistle. But really the issue to me are the bosses. And having the shield hold block, you don't get melees for doing that. Activate the crits, attack with that. You can even run Blind Faith. Like, let's say it's Sand King. You have blocked the first 3-hit combo, wailing on them as normal. Everything else, you parry that so that your Giant Whistle comes off cooldown even faster. So the verdict on this, sell it while it's purple, keep it while it's green. Assassin Dagger, this thing is a red-purple split, so the only colorless version is the green version. I would sell that because the gameplay, again, the ideal is like you drop a wolf trap, the monster's stuck, go behind it, start stabbing with the Assassin Dagger, or you just use Nutcracker. OV, it's ice shards plus the Assassin Dagger. You throw the ice shard, they're frozen, roll behind it, stab, awesome. And it's like, you could do that with Flawless and kill it from the front. But I would say, don't worry about this as green. If you see it, just sell it. The other colors, it scales off purple, scales off red. Bloodsword, however, Bloodsword is something that I have used off color. And to be honest, I die whenever I do it. It's very sad. I think it's just me that happens to. The tactics version of the Bloodsword is there because, like, blood affix scaling on tactics items is really good. So take, for example, a turret. You might be running double crossbow. You might be running heavy, flamethrower. Any of this stuff that gets bonus damage to bleeding hits really, really hard on bosses. You also have things like the sinew slicer, the cleaver. That way you can stack up bleed and then get these humongous pops on bosses. And of course, with cleaver, that's something that you can do while you're red. But when you're purple, you get the advantage of support mutation. And you can run support mutation while you're red. But of course, while you're purple, it's even better. So you can run things like a wolf trap with support on Timekeeper. That's like the melt that happens with that when you're playing purple is bar none amazing. Green actually has a lot of difficulty finding bleeding in the kit. Giant Whistle, Mushroom Boy, Death Orb all does bonus damage to bleeding. And you could say, okay, well, V, what if I just take an off-color Corrupted Power? That way I can power up my Death Orb and I won't have to worry about bleed. You probably don't want to do that. Giant Whistle is pretty huge. You don't want to eliminate, especially while you're playing survival. The only time you want to eliminate a skill while you're playing survival, if you're playing something like the Scythe. The Scythe does all the damage. You don't need a lot of skills behind that. You just need protection. So what Bloodsword does in a survival build is it makes the skills themselves do ridiculous amount of damage, probably hitting damage caps at that point. Almost better than red Bloodsword in my opinion, but still the purple version, very good. The green version, very good. So Twin Dagger, you all know I hate this item just in general. I would say that the purple version might do something with initiative, where the idea is that you walk in, that's this right here. The first attack, it probably won't kill the monster. Like, who am I kidding? Even Tentacle sometimes doesn't kill the monster with initiative, and Tentacle does more damage than the first hit of Twin Dagger anyway. So the only time Twin Dagger while purple probably works is with Corrupted Power in the same way that Balance Blade works, but I still don't think it's enough damage to kill the monster in the first hit. You could say, okay, well, maybe you go Apex Predator. That way you're invisible, you go up to the monster, you do the 3-hit combo, kill it, and then you're invisible again. But in that case, you may as well just run Assassin Dagger. And then while you're playing green, I mean, what you're losing out on green is damage mutations on the first enemies. Like, it kind of works when you're playing Brutality because you have combo, Initiative is supposed to be like the combo equivalent, but I don't think it's the same at all. When you're playing survival, you have nothing. Like maybe you could rock combo and hope the 10% is enough to kill something, but I doubt it. So I would say as purple, sell it. As green, sell it. Broadsword, it's a green red, so that means tactics. Almost the same scenario here. I actually think I tried this. I had a legendary broadsword that did like 40% to enemies. And I was gonna take that with Predator, with the idea that I would walk up to every enemy, attack it with the horizontal, kill it, go invisible, go to the next vertical, kill that, and you just keep going. But the issue became if I didn't kill it with my initial swing, the horizontal swing, I'm not gonna go invisible. I'll kill it with like one of my other weapons. Say I was using like Knife Dance. I just pop Knife Dance and it dies. But then on my next monster, all I have is the horizontal again. So like I never get that fantasy of going invisible on every monster using broadsword compared to something like Assassin Dagger, where okay, you may not kill it on the first hit, but because the attack speed's faster, it might give you 2 hits, then you go invisible and you keep going. So I'd say tactics, don't take that. Shovel, I probably would take as tactics. Maybe not for very long. It would again be a placeholder. We kind of think of shovel as a D rank item anyway. So as a D rank item, it's gonna take you a little ways. You might get victims slow while nearby enemies, and that would be kind of nice. But I think overall, if you're gonna use shovel while purple, you should probably ditch it for something as soon as you can. Even like thinking about the kind of gameplay that Meat Skewer gives you, that initial hit on the shovel, it like kind of stuns the enemy. You can get sort of the same thing with Meat Skewer because you get the slide through, and that will give you like an extra second to get attack off. Maybe shovel would be good with initiative, that way you don't have to worry about hitting a monster twice. But we don't really like to use initiative in general, so anytime like that's the reason why I use the weapon, maybe not that great. On bosses, it's really good at interrupting boss attacks. So like Mama Tick, Conjunctivius, you're rocking support mutation. Those are probably gonna be pretty big hits. Probably better than Assassin Dagger while playing purple. So I think I would honestly take that if you're rocking like that, plus a turret, plus something like Knife Dance, and then you just keep wailing on them and hope that those interrupts are enough to like stun lock the boss, and then it finally dies to the turret. Curse Sword, I don't think that's worth talking about at all. I mean, yeah, I guess if it's green and you want to play like Curse Sword, it's fine. You can do it. I'm not gonna say anything. All right, next on the list is the Survival Satis Stiletto, which means like, so it's red purple split. It's gonna be the same thing where you're basically using open wounds with this and Instinct Master of Arms, and like that is a decent amount of work to put in. Is it fun? It's probably fun. Does it help? Having bleed on hit helps out Giant Whistle and helps out Death Orb. In fact, it's probably like pretty decent if you don't really plan on using Wolf Trap or any turret, I guess, while playing survival, because these items have poison clouds very often, and you're basically giving up the idea of poison cloud and poison synergy to rock open wound Satis Stiletto with this Giant Whistle and Death Orb. Of course, you could keep the poison synergy. You basically have the crits on that with Instincto, but like having a lot of crushers to me like is kind of a waste compared to having lots of Giant Whistles. Crusher's great and all, like being able to drop it and spam it is awesome. Maybe you take it with Giant Whistle and you get poison and bleeding on both of them. That's like best case scenario. I think like ideally you just aim for these two with open wounds and you call it a day while you're playing survival. So Swift Sword, just like the Ice Shard argument, like you take this with Ice Shard, it's incredible. It's like awesome, mind blowing as a matter of fact. But Swift Sword also works without the ice shards. Like, it's good by itself. You don't have combo, but what you do have is the ability to run tonic. That way on bosses you can get that crit, and that works while brutality as well. The difference between this and brutality is that the instincto, while playing survival, allows access to like more giant whistles, more death orbs, compared to playing brutality where it's like instinct gives you more fire grenades, which is great. Like, it's awesome, but it's actually like giant whistle is pretty good on bosses, and getting it out more often is only better. Of course, you could drop in more crushers. You could use more ice grenades. While playing tactics, same scenario, you have access to Apex Predator. That way, the first monsters you kill while you're not invisible gives you more time, because you hit the invisibility, go to the next one, try to hit it as soon as you can. Once you have a live Swift Sword, the next attacks on monsters should give you invisibility throughout the entire time. Giant Killer, that's basically purple. I think maybe it's okay if you also have a tactics weapon that can kill all the monsters on its own. Say, for example, like you're rocking this behind throwing knife, the kunai, plus like turrets or something. I think you could actually drop your shield or your Hokuto bow and maybe carry this. I feel like it's asking for a lot. Like, it's almost too much of a risk going into melee range on a boss with this thing when I can just drop 2 turrets, have throwing knife. Maybe not worth it. I would say for fun factor, like against elites, it's fun to be able to one-shot them with this thing, but maybe it could be fun. Like, I would say it's probably better than Tactics Twin Dagger, only because you're actually not using this to kill normal monsters. It's just there in your offhand. Survival Shrapnel Axe. I don't think there's any reason to use a survival Shrapnel Axe. You use Shrapnel with brutality because you're playing open wounds and melee mutation. You use Shrapnel with tactics because you're using Ripper, or because you're using support mutation. Without any of that, I don't think you use Shrapnel Axe when playing green. It feels like it's not worth the slot. Just use Nutcracker. Purple Seismic Strike. I don't know if you all have seen, our buddy made a video about Purple Seismic Strike, and I think the idea is that you can run Heart of Ice no matter what, and when you're using this with like turrets, say Wolf Trap, Crusher, Double Crossbow-matic, Sinew Slicer, Corrupted Power, Corrosive Cloud, like all these high cooldown tactics mutations, and I think it works. Would I run it? I would for a little while, but I would probably swap off as soon as it goes bad. Like, instantly regret if I get hit using this thing. War Spear. That's basically a tactics War Spear. This is almost usable while playing Apex Predator. Is because, like, if you tag one monster, chances are the War Spear could probably kill the next thing, but I don't think it's worth doing. You could rock initiative with it, but again, in my opinion, if the build works only because you're running initiative, I don't think it's worth it. Yeah, some of these I can knock out really quickly. It's like, there's no reason to do that, I think, compared to Impaler. Purple Impaler, you lose out on melee mutation. So I feel like in that regard, maybe it's not good. What would you run? Predator Corrupted Power? And like, maybe that can make it strong? But then once you get to a boss, it's like, why are you using Impaler on the boss? You may as well just use whatever your primary is, which is, say, Throwing Knife. I'm just using Throwing Knife as like the premier tactics item. You could say Electric Whip, you could say Lightning Bolt, Magic Missile, all of that stuff. This is almost similar to a Magic Missile if I think about it. It has a little CC tied to it, but when you're playing tactics, it's not enough. Survival, like, yeah, you could do basic survival gameplay. You could almost say, like, what's the difference between this and this thing? Symmetrical Lance. Shovel, I guess. The nice thing about Seismic Strike is it works on pretty much every monster. I think this could probably work as survival. Just like Tactics Shovel, I probably wouldn't stick with it for very long, because the gameplay you can get with this, you may as well just use Nutcracker. So next on the list is Symmetrical Lance. Basically, it doesn't do this stuff. You might think that maybe rock this with Apex Predator, but I don't think so. It could be fun overall. I have Shovel over it because Shovel has some crowd control in the first couple hits. That way you might be able to activate your Apex Predator even if the monster like sees you. Otherwise, with this thing, it's not good on the bosses either, so you can't just take it in like you would with these two. Rapier. We actually had a run of this before. I think it was a viewer submitted build. Someone wanted us to use the Rapier in a survival build with ice shards. And I think like it worked eventually, but the question would be like, why would I want to do that? It's because I'm rocking Instincto. Like maybe you could get this that spreads oil, and I think that was like the perfect build. And what you get is the ability to play like a fake flawless, but without having to worry about the hit. Is it like better than just using Nutcracker with a wolf trap? Is it better than flawless with ice shards? Maybe not better. Like better is probably not the right word. It's just a safer version of that, and I think that's probably okay. Meat Skewer. While survival, I mean, technically it's probably the same as Rapier, but the difference is that the combo with the ice shards on this is kind of awkward because you throw it, slide through, throw again, do one tap, throw again, do the other tap, and like that I feel like is gameplay that's gonna get you in trouble eventually. So I'd rather not bother with that. Of course, there are people out there who, you know, the meat skewer, busted item. You see a meat skewer, you gotta take it. And that could be true. Like I'm not gonna say it's not, but for the purpose of this list, I would not use a survival meat skewer if I had the option. Nutcracker. That is a tactics Nutcracker. Basically, you would run Nutcracker the same way you would run survival, because most of this stuff is also tactics. So ice grenade, crusher, wolf trap. You could even continue to play Heart of Ice. You could rock Heart of Ice, support mutation, and like disengage. That way if the monster does break out, you'll be able to get bonus damage. Or grapple. Yeah, grapple hook has a stun tied to it. Look at that damage. So for those who don't know, the initial attack you do after the grapple stuns. It doesn't stun on hook, you have to hit it. So you hit it once, stay still, hit again, crit. Boy Axe, we actually had the busted green build, monsters couldn't touch me. That was the clickbait title, but it wasn't clickbait. It actually worked. Let's keep it going. Spartan Sandals, while green, while tactics. I think it's good. I think it's a both. Almost like it should be a survival weapon. I would almost push for this if like I had the power. I don't. But having it as both, I think works. With tactics, you basically, it's like it kills anything in the game. If you're playing against Hand the King, you just kill it with whatever your primary weapon is. It's just like the giant killer, except it's the opposite. While playing tactics, you kill everything with the Spartans. If it's a flying monster, you use your tactics item on it. So say for example, I think the cool like fantasy is the word I like to use. The fantasy of it is marksman bow, but really you can do that with any bow. That's basically your primary weapon, and this is your secondary weapon, and then you alternate which one. Why is nothing in brutality? Because we are looking at melee weapons, and so far every melee weapon has brutality scaling to it. But let's keep going. Spike boot. Spike boot I actually don't mind on... Do I? I actually don't think spike boots are super usable without melee mutation. I mean, survival is nice because you can use ice shards, but again, that's like ice shards is the problem. I guess that also means tactics, so technically you can leave them if you see the ice shards. But I would hate to have this list be dependent on does the ice shard show up. If you don't see the ice shards, probably get rid of it. Because if you're using Wolf Trap or Crusher, maybe Crusher's the best example because you want the monster to try to swing at you, but it's slow. That way you can get crits. I'd say just use Nutcracker if you're gonna do that. But, you know, maybe it is super fun to use this with Crusher on something like the Timekeeper. Slow her down, get crits from the front, roll behind. She gets stunned by the Crusher, attack some more, she tries to turn, you just keep going. Like, that's, I think, good gameplay. Tactics, however, Corrupted Power, and maybe Ice Bow. We did that before, where we like shoot with the Ice Bow first, and then you do like your Street Fighter V combo using the spike. I do this, like you all don't know what I'm talking about. It's like, it's the up attack, down attack, and then it's like 2 kicks. That's what this motion is. This, I did use it as tactics, and it actually didn't feel half bad. While survival, it's pretty similar to using this, but I feel like survival skills, none of them particularly help out the Air Jordans, the Hayabusa boots. Maybe you run stuff like Mushroom Boy, but Mushroom Boy, like just the standard hits on bosses, doesn't really do a lot of damage. And using Wolf Trap with this, again, just use Nutcracker. This has no benefit using Wolf Trap. But while you're playing tactics, you get to use Last Ring Aura. You get to use Corrupted Power. Really everything that Brutality would do, you could do with this, but you also have ability to use Predator and go invisible in biomes. Where Brutality doesn't have that. Brutality, you want to use like combo, or maybe you would go with melee mutation for the slow. That way you can actually deal with the monster. With tactics, you get to go invisible, so that helps you deal with it. Hayabusas, side by side, is pretty much the same thing. The same kind of gameplay that you would use with the Hayabusa boots, while purple, you can do the same thing. Green, I think getting a monster to 40% while playing this is a little risky. I would probably just use a regular survival weapon. I do know some people do it because it's fun to use fast weapons in survival. I agree it is, but I would probably ditch this for something else if I could. Valmont Whip. Valmont Whip while green. I technically never liked Valmont Whip while green. It does work because of Wolf Trap, so we're gonna leave it there. Survival, like, it's okay. I really just prefer Valmont Whip with melee mutation, because if you miss the first strike, at least the monster's slowed down, and you can do like a little bit more without having to worry about death. Wrenching Whip. Wrenching Whip while purple is not half bad because of Corrupted Power, and the invisibility works on all aspects of the attack. While green, I'm not sure like what benefit you get by using Wrenching Whip while green. The difference with this is that this benefits from Wolf Trap. Not to say that this doesn't, like snaring a monster helps with anything, but in terms of like direct benefit, like you got this and it actually did its job because you're running survival. Like, I think that's fine. Whereas this, Wrenching Whip doesn't really have a job to it besides the crowd control. It like pulls a monster in, hits it, and then knocks it away with a kick. Like, that's gameplay to me. Oil Sword. Oil Sword while purple, really good. Oil Sword while green, really good. You use that. A matter of fact, if you see it drop to the ground, you probably take it. Reason why, this works with so many stuff in both colors. You could do Oil Sword for fire. You could do Oil Sword for ice. You can use ice shards in survival or tactics. There's survival turrets like the Crusher that does fire on the ground when they disappear. And if you have Oil Sword, then your giant whistle might do like double damage to oil, or whatever might deal double damage to burning oil. While tactics, it's like just as good, but you also have the ability to do fire builds where the Oil Sword is like secondary to that. I wouldn't recommend it, but like Firebrand, the Molotov in front of an Oil Sword does work very well. I don't really like Torch, to be honest. It's good, and I maybe hate it. I think I hate it because it's good. Torch is okay. I mean, it's a fire source, and like a fire source works with everything. It's like probably one of the better fire sources. Fire Blast puts you in some danger. It's better than Pyro, I feel.
What happened?
What
happened?
It does damage compared to this thing.
Senpai.
Using it while tactics, it gives you access to fire that's maybe a little dangerous, but at least you can rock Apex Predator. It works with support mutation on the initial hits, which is kind of nice. While playing survival, this gives you access to burning oil. You might have oil on your turret. This thing gives you the burning. Gives you access to giant whistles or death orbs that do bonus to burning. So I think if you see it, you leave it. I don't think it's game breaking, but it does stuff. Frantic. Now Frantic Sword, while green, I have tried before, and I actually think it's probably good. What you can do is you can use Necromancy while you're playing survival. Necromancy only works up to 50%. So if you happen to get to below 50, it's not that hard to maintain the 50. And then in the biome, you just make sure you don't eat the food until you're ready to leave. What other people do is that while survival, you use Necromancy, you go up to 50, and then the only food you leave and eat is infected food. And then as soon as you get the ability to have 5 or higher melees, that's something specific to 4 BC or higher, you eat all infected food.
Look at that damage.
Keep your melees bar above 50%, and now you don't have to worry about the health anymore. And if your health is dropping, then you bring in something like Extended Heal. That is this thing right here, Extendal, I think is what we call it. And if you kill elites, you can try to alleviate some of the malaise. Malaise. I think that's what people want me to call it. But I've been saying malaise for like 20 years, so I'm gonna keep saying that. Purple Flawless used to be the dream version of the Flawless. And if you think about it, the idea of Flawless is like, don't get hit. And if you don't get hit, it's good. So in that circumstance, it probably works as tactics. Because tactics, you want to build Sword of Glass Cannon. And if you're playing a melee build, maybe you're using like Stealth Bomb. So that way, if... I keep calling it Stealth Bomb, but Smoke Bomb. But you can use this. If you lose the crits, it has damage reduction. You can get into range, kill a monster, and hopefully be able to crit after. You could also use Grapple Hook for the same scenario. Kill everything with Grapple Hook, and then once your crits are ready, then you run around the map as normal. That also gives you access to Scheme. Phaser is also pretty good. So again, like looking at the colorless chart, this actually works with a lot of tactics skills in a way that Wrenching Whip and Hayabusa boots don't. They work with corrupted power, but this thing actually benefits from being a tactics weapon. Flint, that's basically tactics. I would probably not use a tactics flint The idea of Predator Flint is kind of fun, but I think it's not worth the effort. Like, you may as well just use Assassin Dagger in that circumstance, because by the time you get to a boss, this is not going to help you kill a boss. While survival,
no.
it like
Look at
at
that
least
damage.
lets you
We're
do
dead.
some stuff on bosses. While brutality, again, it lets you do some things, but hopefully by then you're going to replace it. While playing tactics, not worth it. Tentacle. This is something I have never, ever used while survival. So this is gonna be all theory craft. And I apologize to anyone who's out here thinking, oh, V's making this awesome colorless list. It's because he's used every item in the game. Like, clearly, he knows what he's talking about. When it comes to green tentacle, I don't think I have ever used that, ever. It's gonna continue to stay in the neither camp. And the reason why is, once again, without having a way to buff the initial attack from the tentacle, there's no reason to use it. At least with brutality, you have combo. At least with tactics, you have corrupted power and initiative. When you're rocking this, you can't even put ice shards in front of it. That's how, like, unfortunate it is. Vorpan, I want to say, will work on both. What's nice about survival Vorpan is you can use a shield. So you think about, like, the immaculate gameplay coming from the Dead Cells masters. I think I saw this on Reddit, where the person was using Blood Sword along with Bloodthirsty Shield. And it may have been Timekeeper, it could have been Hand of the King, where, like, they don't press circle. All they do is they stand still, attack with the Blood Sword, and then when Timekeeper attacks, they parry. So this does the same thing with survival. You can just stand still, constantly bash face,
We're dead.
and then parry with any of the awesome shields in the roster. You can rock Instincto with, again, long cooldown mutations, Giant Whistle, Death Orb. You can use slow, I said mutations, turrets, powers. You can have a slow with something like the Crusher, that way the monster's standing still, attack with a Vorpan. Wolf Trap, they can still swing at you, so be careful with that. While tactics, you have Apex Predator. You can go invisible, smack some enemies. You can use Ice Bow, freeze them first, walk up, smack them across the mouth. You can use ice shards, put it in front. Vorpan often does burning oil, regular oil. So you have this in front, you get crits on oil. So pretty versatile. I'd say use it on both. A little more versatile than this thing, I would imagine. Fans, while survival, I don't know if it really does anything. I think the fans by themselves can be giga busted if they have self synergy. That means they apply poison on hit and they do bonus damage to poison. I don't think that means you take it while survival. I think that's just like the fans are good. So maybe like you leave it here, but not because like there's some awesome synergy between
Look at that damage.
flashing fans and survival builds. I guess you could think like if you rock a shieldless fans build, we're using like Ice Bow plus the fan with Gastro. That way if you get hit, you can use food to fully heal. And then you just run around trying to kill everything with the fans. I think it's probably fine. It's not unusable, that's for sure. I'd use this before I would use Meat Skewer, for example, while survival. All right, Scythe. So Scythe, maybe
what
not
happened?
use it while
What
tactics. And the reason
happened?
why, even though you do get the benefit of Ice Grenade and Ice Armor, the reason why I wouldn't use this as tactics is because tactics kills bosses with their skills. The reason why you use Scythe with survival is because
Look
you
at
have
damage.
Ice
We're
Grenade
dead.
and Ice Armor. And you're killing everything with the Scythe. Technically, you could do that with tactics, but what Scythe has is if you make a mistake, you don't die. compared to tactics where
no. Look at that
you have to
damage.
be a
We're
little
dead.
more vigilant with the scythe gameplay. If you mess up the scythe gameplay, all of a sudden you're dead because you're playing tactics. Brutality benefits from running Berserk Mutation while playing 4BC, and you still can use the Ice Grenade and Ice Armor because they don't care what color you are. They work no matter what. So in that circumstance, the benefit you get from Brutality is you get to use Soldier Resistance for the health bar. You get to use Melee Mutation for the slow. That way on stuff like Timekeeper, on stuff like Conjunctivius, you can at least slow them to get the combos off. And that works to a degree. In my opinion, better than it would for tactics. Bozuki kind of falls in the same scenario. I would not use that while tactics, for the same reason I would not use Scythe while tactics, is because while playing the Bozuki, you want to be able to kill stuff with the Bozuki. You do have the option of using a wolf trap. Say you're playing against Timekeeper again, you drop the wolf trap, you run behind her, do the Bozuki stuff, and if it kills her, great. But then it's like, or you could have just run a standard tactics build with the wolf trap and not try to do this immaculate gameplay that needs to be very precise, or else you get hit while playing tactics, and no one wants that. It's different than Nutcracker, because Nutcracker you don't have to try. You can just throw the boy axe, you can just lay down the wolf trap and start swinging. You can't really do that with Bozuki. Brain usage is required, and you know we don't particularly care for brain usage around here. Finally, the last melee item we have here, the Crowbar. Crowbar actually really good on every color because you take the door no matter what. A matter of fact, the last time I used this weapon, so here it is. Never skip survival Crowbar. That's the name of the vid. It actually works the same way as it would with tactics. The difference is that with Crowbar as survival, you get to use Heart of Ice and Crusher or Wolf Trap. So in this scenario, we actually ran Ice Shards, so this is like giga busted at this point. This is borderline unfair. Now, the only thing is you do have to break the door yourself. Like, some of these monsters do actually destroy the door. But if you have a shield, it's also really good. But really what you want to do is put the door in front of Hand the King, get burning oil on the ground, lay in the crits. We have so much cooldown reduction here. Look at this, like, but before the crits even end, my door is off cooldown. That went from 10 seconds to 6 seconds. 6 seconds to 1 second. That's pretty strong. You love seeing Hand King go in the pit? That's what I'm talking about. That's how we do it. That's how you know it's a busted build, because Hand King just dove right in. So yeah, tactics, you do the same thing. Yeah, you don't have the option to run, you can run Heart of Ice. It doesn't really matter. I would probably prioritize support over it and go something like support, Instincto, Disengage. That way death is not gonna be as guaranteed. But running support alongside your door, I think, is gonna give you enough like decent damage before the door technically goes away. And thank you for that hydration rag. I think we're actually gonna take a break. We're a third of our way done. I'm thinking about this right now. I thought maybe I could do all of these in one night. All right, we're not gonna do a custom mode. I don't really want to play like straight colorless mode. I actually don't enjoy that very much. I'd rather find the stuff normally.